Hey everyone, this is MrAddOil again, helping you fight your today for your better tomorrow. And today we're going to continue this video series on why you should consider software development as a career for you. And we're on argument or reason number 3, which is you should consider software development as your main career if you're a creative person. Actually, one of my closest friends, a friend that I actually witnessed to be his best man at his wedding, he's a very logical person, and he argued, hey, if you're considering software development because you think you can be creative, well, you're dead wrong, because you're just gonna be a logic-driven person that has to churn out code. That's like the whole basis of software development, right? And then, I really respect his feedback, his constructive feedback, and it is true. Like when you're writing code, you can't escape from that, right? Like it has to logically work for your code to run. But that's on the execution, the pragmatic side of coding. But most of coding and programming on the background actually is very creative, because you're taking an idea that you have in your head that can solve a problem, and you're realizing or actualizing it in the real world. And that's a big creative feat. And that's because all abstract thinking, problem solving, they all stem from creativity. In order for you to be a good problem solver, you have to be creative and think outside the box, take a problem, break it down to its finest details, and then strategically think of solutions to address those mini problems, right? That takes a lot of creative or high level creative or proudness for you to accomplish those type of feats. And it takes like a high level of abstract thinking and creativity for you to take what's in your mind, like I mentioned previously, to take what's in your mind and bring it into the physical world. If you argue that your mind is not part of the physical world, but I digress, right? Take an idea in your head, in your brain, and put it right in the physical world. That takes a lot of work. It's like writing an essay, right? You're taking your thoughts and you're putting them down in written language. Same thing with programming and software development. It's that creative aspect of coding that allows you to take your ideas and put them on paper, so to speak. And lastly, not lastly, but another point for creativity and why that relates to software development, right? Well, it kind of relates to teaching. Well, it is teaching, right? Teaching software development concepts or engineering concepts. That takes a lot of creativity to verbally express or communicate these complex thoughts, right? And then usually these creative people, they tend to speak or philosophize their concepts. They're using analogies, imageries to take a very complex idea and dumbify or make it easier to digest and consume for your mind, right? And that can be for other software developers or for people who are non-technical. And in order for you to have that ability to take a complex idea and make it simple using a metaphor, analogy, or imagery, it takes a lot of creative ability to do that. So the question you have to ask yourself is, are you a creative? Because I know I am. Next, I'm gonna bring up a couple areas where I feel like I'm creative, and let me see, and we're gonna see if you resonate with that. So for this exercise, if you resonate with at least 4 of these points that I'm gonna mention, then you can qualify yourself as a creative that's worthy to consider software development as a career or something else. So for all the B-boys and B-girls out there, if you're a breakdancer, then I would count that as something that's very creative, right? So for me, I started breakdancing when I was in middle school, 6th grade. For like 10 years, I competed semi-professionally in the San Francisco Bay Area. I also taught the art, taught it to like elementary school kids, middle school students, high school, and even college. So took that creative energy that I had as a dancer, specifically a b-boy or breakdancer, and that's one of my creative traits, I guess, as a b-boy. So if you're a b-boy, b-girl, or breakdancer, then hey, you're a creative. And number 2, I mean, you're a creative if you're a musician, right? For me, I'm also a musician, even though I'm not a professional, like celebrity musician, but I'm an amateur musician. So I like to play guitar, sing, beatbox. I know how to sing melodies and also vocal harmonies. So if that sounds like something that you can do also, then congrats, you're also a creative. I got a little too excited there. So I'm gonna keep talking about being a musician, right? Not just the performing side of being a musician, like where you sing and you can do all that performance stuff, but if you're also good at the musical theory aspect of music, then that's even a stronger sign that maybe software development will be a good fit for you. Because for you to understand music theory, to kind of marriage and understand how the physical sounds correlate to a theory or some sort of structure or pattern in music theory, then wow, you have a skill set, a creative skill set that normal people don't have. So congrats for that, and you should feel proud of yourself. Like, if you have that type of skill set, then consider yourself worthy and maybe consider taking that leap and trying to learn more about software development. And reason number 3 of why you can consider exploring software development, right? If you're a gamer now or in the past or of some sort, right? For me, I remember I was a huge gamer when I was young. I used to cut middle school and high school and go to cyber cafes in San Francisco before they shut down, for good reason too. Like, if they didn't shut down, I would have continued to cut school and my grades would have been bad, and probably I'll be less educated than I am now. I don't think I'm that educated, but it would have been bad. But I digress. If you were ever a gamer of some sort in the past, you played real-time strategy games or just games in general, specifically on strategic games, then that type of skill set, that type of thinking, reaction time, keyboard shortcuts, and like just coordinating all of that with other people to accomplish a goal of defeating your enemies in that game or hitting an objective, those are like a pretty powerful skill set to have as a software developer. And you should give yourself a round of applause if you have that, because you are a creative person in that sense if you're a gamer. And that qualifies you to consider taking that small step to learning a little bit more about software development. And reason number 4 of whether you should consider yourself a creative, which will suffice you to consider software development as your career, right? So if you like writing, you like to take your thoughts and put it down in a written word as a blogger or a professional writer of some sort, then you're creative, right? Because as a writer, you're taking arguments, abstract arguments in your mind, and then you're putting them down and organizing them into a cohesive, congruent argument in the written language. And there, you get to share with someone else where you communicated the invisible things in your mind to someone else. So if you're able to do that and you enjoy doing that, then software development might be a good fit for you. And reason number 5 of how you would classify yourself as creative. It's a stretch, but I'm gonna go there. So if you consider yourself a philosopher of some sort, I'm saying this because I majored in philosophy, specifically philosophy of religion. If you have that, I guess, like disposition to think philosophically, where you enjoy arguments about existence, metaphysics, ethics, language, or even like religion, right? Like when I was in college, I really enjoyed the atheist versus theist arguments, like Christian apologetics, stuff like that. That really inspired me, and I was really interested in that. And that takes a big amount of like abstract thinking, where when you think of something, when you think of point A, you're like, oh crap, point A could be defeated by point 1, 2, and 3. So you have to think in a very systematic way in order for you to tackle a problem or even tackle reality. You're like, am I really real? Stuff like that. So if you kind of have, if your brain is wired to kind of think like that, then software development might be a good field for you, because like software development is like a reflection on like the human experience, right? When you look at yourself, well, you can't look at yourself, but when you experience yourself experiencing the outside world, you can kind of argue yourself as like a computer program, and then the world is your UI, your interface, and then you're using your own logic to interact with the logic of the physical world. So if you could think like that and you enjoy thinking like that, software development, baby. And reason number 6 of why, or for you to consider yourself as a creative, if you enjoy traveling, if you're a traveler. This is maybe a stretch of an argument, but let me try to defend it. So I would argue that people who enjoy traveling are very creative people. And that's because they might be introspective in some way, where when they travel, they find themselves out there, right? And then they use that outside information to kind of process things inside, right? And then software development, it's a lot like that. So there's a reason why like the front end or the website UI is designed that way. It's for that user experience. So for you to have that awareness, especially as a traveler, to be like, okay, when I travel here and experience this culture, this language, these type of habits, these type of people, I'm having this experience. And if you take that experience and kind of like mix it up with the other traits that I mentioned in this video, where you write that down, you express it in a vlog, or you express it in some way, and then you're taking this traveling information and then you're making something meaningful out of it. And then that's a lot like software development, wouldn't you say? And lastly, the last 7 point of why you can consider yourself as a creative. If you're multilingual in any way, you know more than one language, then I would say you're a creative, and that would kind of qualify you to consider giving software development a shot. For me, I can argue that I'm quadlingual. So Burmese was my first language, then it was English, then it was like some sort of Chinese, it was like Cantonese and Mandarin, and then later on I beefed that up and I became really proficient in like Mandarin and decently proficient in Cantonese. So I would argue that Cantonese is like, even though they're under the umbrella of Chinese, the Chinese language, Cantonese it's arguably its own type of language. So I'm gonna just, give myself more credit. So I'm kind of quadlingual. So the benefit of being multilingual is you see the world, you experience the world, or you experience things, you interpret things in different lenses. So for me, I'm able to interpret the world in 4 lenses. So the same thing that we're looking at, let's say like someone who only speaks English or one language, when we look at one thing, the same thing, I can interpret it in 4 different languages, 4 different perspectives versus that person who only speaks one language. And that gives you a big advantage, because it stacks, right? Like in each of those languages, you can interpret it the same way you would do it in English, but you would translate it in a different language. And then within those nuances, you discover innovation or something that you couldn't figure out just looking at it from one language. So if you're able to do that, then you're creative, because your brain is set up that way, right? You're able to experience, interpret the world in different lenses. For me, it's 4 lenses. For you, it might be 2, 3, maybe like 5, 10 languages, which is, wow, good for you. So there you have it. Those are the reasons for this argument of why you should become a software developer, right? Or learn software development, because you're a creative. So again, a refresher, an action item for you is, if you resonate with at least 4 of those points that I mentioned towards the end of whether you're a creative, then you can self-qualify yourself and be like, hey, I am a creative and I should give software development a shot.